my motto in life is to make farming safer and to help families when it's
hmm
not quite safe enough. Welcome back, everyone. Craig and Leah here today. How are you today, Leah?
I'm all right. How about you, Craig?
I'm good. We're going to talk about farming today.
Who's farming?
My farming, the background farming, farming cases. How much do you know about farming? You know much?
No.
You're in the dairy state.
Yeah, well, my dad grew up at a farm, but
Okay.
they were not super, let's say, lucrative in the farming
Well, nobody
business.
is. That's why. That's the problem. No one, you can't do it for money,
Mm. It's got to be passion based. Is that what it is?
pretty much. It's subsidized.
So, when you were a kid, Craig, did you have to use the Farmer's Almanac? The old one? Told you when the sun rose and set?
I'm sure my dad did. Um, I'm sure I remember my dad talking about trying to figure out when to make hay when we were kids, and that's more of a weather thing than the almanac thing.
hmm
Yeah, you paid close attention to the weather. I mean, farmers still do, but back then, pretty much everyone made dry hay, and so you needed 3 to 4 days of drying weather to be able to make hay, and it's hard to come by. It doesn't stop raining very well. Look at this year. So yeah. So where do you want to start?
So, take us back to the baby Craig, pre JD, pre law school.
Okay. So some of my fondest memories are from the farm. My parents both grew up in farms, northeast Iowa, both farm families. They got married, and I believe they rented the first farm. I was too young to really be involved in the business. And in fact, I don't even know if they rented. They may have done it on shares, which was more common back then. I don't know if it's so much now. The guy that owned the farmland, maybe the cattle, and then my parents did all the work. I know they probably had to buy some of the stuff, and then you split the profits, which wasn't a lot of profits. It
hmm
never has been. So that was my youngest. We were only in that farm until I was about 5 or 6, and then we moved. I was always heartbroken because I missed the farm,
hmm
that farm anyway. And it was a pretty typical farm down in northeast Iowa. It's very hilly there. It's not unlike it is here around the bluffs, so very steep.
Some of it's still the driftless area, isn't it?
I don't know about northeast Iowa, but it looks very similar. So everything's rolling. It's a heavy clay
Mm.
soil. This is 40 years ago now. They were starting to do more conservation efforts, so
Mm.
putting in terraces, trying to farm with the contour of the land. I remember that. One of my earliest memories is riding. So my dad had case tractors.
Mm.
Not sure why. I think that's his
Case
dad.
versus John Deere.
Yeah, well, that was John Deere territory down there, especially. But
Ooh.
we had Case. We had old Case tractors.
Maybe in the comments they can write if they're John Deere case.
Yeah, I don't know if the rivalries are quite what they once were. My grandpa worked at the John Deere factory for many years, plus
Mm.
farming, but I think he was a Case man too, because I remember him having a couple cases. My dad had a 730 Case. That was our loader tractor. That was the small one. We had a 930 and a 1030. The 1030 was the big workhorse, which would be small by today's standards, but that's what we plowed and disced with. I actually have a Case now. I have a Case 430,
Mm.
which is I think it was made in 1964. So that's my tractor.
Nice.
People watch my videos will see me driving that tractor. Similar style, similar color. But I remember the barn. I remember milking. It was a stanchion barn. I remember being in the hay mow. We had tall silos. One of the things I don't remember this. My parents said I was a climber, and they caught me climbing one of the silos. Dad freaked out. He couldn't find me. He looked up, and I was on top of the silo.
Mm.
So he climbed up after me. Uh, Unfortunately, all my kids have been the same way. They're all climbers, but I remember that. I love the cows. I love the barn. I love the barn in the winter when it's
Oh.
cold outside and the barn is full of cows and it's
Mm.
warm. And I love the sounds and the smells of the barn.
The smells? Craig,
Uh,
really?
you didn't really smell them. It was the cows and the hay and the grain. I don't know. It didn't really stink. Not
Mm.
that I remember.
Yeah, that's just the city slicker in me talking.
Eh,
That's what.
Yeah, yeah. So those are some of my fondest memories. We lived down in the bottom of a valley, and they did that because there was a creek that ran through it, and the farm was old, and so
hmm
that was probably the original source of water, probably how they cooled milk. So yeah, I remember that. Every so often, I took the kids down there fishing about a month ago, and we drove by the old place. I think the buildings are all gone. The silo might still be there. The barn has long been torn down, the old house, and the farmland is all in CRP. Do you know what that is?
Nope.
So CRP is the Conservation Reclamation Project. I could be totally butchering it. CRP, or 10-year set aside, is where land that is sort of sensitive to erosion, you stop farming it, and the government pays you to stop farming, and you plant it in grass. And a lot of that land down there now is in the CRP program because it's even with terraces and contour farming, you get a lot of erosion, and so they put a lot of that into the CRP program to stop it. So there's no farming going on there now, but I always enjoy driving by it when I go down to that area, visit my relatives. So yeah, so that's my earliest memories of the farm. After that, my parents, we moved to South Dakota. That was the first time. We lived in South Dakota multiple times. And we moved from Northeast Iowa, a little farm, to a large dairy farm where my dad was he worked on the farm. He was primarily a feeder. He fed the cows, and that was on an irrigation project because western South Dakota is pretty dry, so you have to irrigate it to get things to amount to much. There's a big reservoir. I think it's called Orman Dam, a very old earthen dam, and so then they would irrigate so you could grow corn and alfalfa. And so, unlike the hilly ground that I remember, everything's flat. The fields are big. The barn was big, milking hundreds of cows instead of 50 cows. And so we lived out there for a few years. My dad worked there, and I would go over there when I wasn't in school and help out and ride around the tractor and stuff like that. Yeah, so I've been dairy has been a big part of my childhood. Milk cows in college. Went to college at St. Mary's over in Winona, and the 1 year I milked cows in the evenings and on weekends for a guy. I enjoyed that. That was my first time milking in a parlor myself.
What's a parlor?
So when I grew up, most cows were milked in either a tie stall or a stanchion barn, which means that the cows are all in the barn. A lot of times they stay there most of the time, especially during the winter, and they are in a long row, and they're either held by they have a stanchion that just kind of holds them, keeps them from backing out, or they have a tie stall. They'll have like a collar around their neck. You just keep them from moving. And then you would walk in between each cow and carry the milkers. And that's how people milk for a long, long time. There's still people that milk with stanchion barns or tie stall barns. It's harder on the body because you have to get in, you have to squat down. It's hard on knees, backs. But a parlor is usually, there are different styles. Now some of them are robotic. But a parlor is you bring in, let's say, 8 cows at a time or 12 or larger, and you're actually down in a pit. And so the cows are up above you, so you can work at the cows at standing level. You don't have to be squatting over, and cows come in and usually milk them through their back legs or in front of their back legs. And it's a much easier place to it's easier to milk. It's easier on the milkers. You can milk cows faster. And so you bring in a group, milk them, bring in another group, milk them, bring in another group, milk them, instead of in the, like say, a stanchion or a tie stall barn where all the cows are in there. You start at one end and you kind of work your way down and milk them all in a row.
In the newer type, does the cow need to be held back by a harness or anything?
Nope. They kind of come in and they're kind of packed in there. They really can't move. I mean, they're comfortable, but they really can't move anywhere. Or sometimes they'll have little dividers that move that kind of keeps them in. But they're just trained to come in. And they turn and then they wait. And then when you're done milking the group, a gate will open or a bar will drop down and the cows walk through, and then they go back out to their freestall barn where they eat and lay down.
Nice. Yep. And you were talking about robots.
Yeah. So robots, I don't know how long they've been around. I've never been around robot farming, although I've had a case involving robots once. So there's, I would say, kind of key types of robots, and there's certain elements of robots have been incorporated into a dairy for a while. A lot of times your milkers have automatic takeoff so they can sense when the cow is done milking. You don't want to keep milking that cow when she's done milking. For a long time, milkers have had automatic detection. They'll pull them off. But until recently, we really didn't have the ability to robot or automate, like putting the milkers on. But in some dairies, they'll have multiple stations, and the cows come in, and they usually they'll have a tag. They'll have like a computer chip tag, and the cow goes in, and the machine knows which cow that is. They may or may not feed them at the robot station. I'm not sure about that. lot of times the cows want to get in because it feels better to get rid of that milk, and so they'll just
Mm.
naturally come in. And then the machine will. The biggest things for dairy is when the cow comes in, you got to clean them, so you got to sanitize the udder, and not every cow's udder is shaped exactly the same way, and as they get older,
Mhm.
their teats get bigger and stuff
Mhm.
like that. So it's hard with the machine because they're not interchangeable, right? Every cow's a little different
Oh.
size. Some
Mhm.
are taller and shorter. Some of them,
Mhm.
are going to be dirtier than others.
Mhm.
So the robots have a way to go in. They sense the cow's udder, and I think they probably have a memory built in.
Mhm.
And then they wash the cow. They wash the cow, sanitize it,
Mhm.
put the milkers on. Once it's done, pulls the milker off, and then
Mhm.
you dip it. You do some sort of a sanitizer, use like
Mhm.
an iodine dip or something like that.
Mm.
And what it doesn't eliminate labor.
Bacteria.
It doesn't eliminate labor, but it cuts down on it. You
Mm.
usually have like a phone app. You kind of keep an eye if there's a problem. Maybe a cow
Mm.
isn't going in, or there's an
Mhm.
issue. So you can't just like go away for the weekend.
Yeah, yeah.
But it cuts down on the number of hired help that you have to have. Most people at some point, once you get to a certain size, have to hire helper to help come in and milk either 2 or 3
Mhm.
times a day.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then the kind of the newest thing, and this is really on the large dairies. We call them rotisseries, but they're a rotary cow. They're a rotary cow parlor where the cows step on and it's constantly moving.
Oh, fun.
They get on a table and the table moves around, and so by the time the cow gets to the other side, they're done milking. They get off, and so this thing never stops. And I don't know that they ever stop. Those are milking 3 times a day, but it's
Oh.
almost a continuous thing. Like there's very little downtime. You have to shut the milk system down for a period of time to clean and sanitize it,
Mhm.
but otherwise they're pretty much running around the clock, especially if
Wow.
you're milking 3 times a day. But that's just as dairies have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. You have
Mhm.
to handle more cows, and you need to be able to, you know, you have to be able to milk your whole herd
Mhm.
in a matter of, let's say, 6 hours if it's a 3 times a day,
Mm.
so that you have cleanup time and stuff like that. So, yeah, dairy's changed a lot since I was a little kid.
Now they have cow carousels and everything.
Yeah, and speaking of robots, I mean the in the evolution of feeding cows has really probably been the biggest change in terms of how you make feed, how you store feed, how you feed the feed. I mean, the fundamentals are the same. Corn, haylage, and dry alfalfa, dry hay are the kind of the main feed sources for dairy cattle. When I was a kid, we had tall silos. I'm sure you've all seen silos around, either the cement ones or the big blue harvester silos. Same thing. You cut the hay or you cut the corn, and if it's hay, you might let it dry a day, but it's kind of a high moisture thing. And then you run it through a chopper into a wagon or a truck, and then there's a machine that blows it. It's called a blower. Blows it up a tube to the top of the silo,
Mhm.
and then it packs it in the silo, and then it actually ferments.
Mhm.
There's a fermentation process that goes on that turns it sort of like, if you like mow your grass and you have a
Mhm.
pile of lawn clippings and you let it sit for a couple days,
Mhm.
you'll start to heat up
Yeah.
and it'll start to change color and smell. That's what silage is either for corn or hay. It's taking it and it's fermenting it a little bit. I think number one, it helps with storage. It allows it to store and keep, and
Mhm.
also it makes it more digestible. And I think it actually probably makes it taste better too for the cows. So silos were the thing when I was a kid. Then people moved towards bags. You've probably seen those long white tubes of
Yes.
feed. There's a lot of people that still do that.
Mhm.
That it was much you could fill those much quicker. A couple of main challenges with silos is they're slow to fill and they're slow to feed out. Probably the biggest thing is they're slow to feed out. So when you get the hay in there, there's an unloader, usually at the top on the cement ones, or it's in the bottom of the harvesters, and then it blows the feed back out. Well, it can only come out so fast, so that was the challenge for a lot of
Mhm.
farms. Once you got big, the feed wouldn't come out fast enough. It took
Mhm.
took forever. So then by going to bags, you could fill them quicker and you could empty them quicker. You could
Mhm.
use a loader tractor or a skid steer and get that out and put it into the feed bunks or put it into a TMR mixer much quicker.
Mhm.
And then kind of the next evolution after that is bags are only so large and they're kind of expensive. And so
Yeah.
now you see in larger dairies, you see bunkers. So they'll have like a long cement wall, and you pile all the silage in there and you pack it really good, and then you cover it with plastic, and then it ferments in there, and then again, you're feeding similar to a bag,
Mhm.
but you're just doing much larger amounts, and then you're using like a front end loader of some sort to scoop it out as you're
Mhm.
feeding every day. And
Mhm.
so that's kind of been the evolution of how cows have fed, and from being fed in the barn like it was when I was a kid to now cows have typically are separated. So you have the freestall barn, which is where the cows spend most of their time when they're not milking.
Mhm.
That's where they lay down. That's where they're fed in bunks, and then they come into the parlor usually to get milked, and then they go back out. So with the freestall barns, you could feed more cows more quickly than you could under when I was a kid, where you had the silo and it dumped it into a feed
Mhm.
room, and then you're using carts to roll it around in front of the cows. You were limited by how many cows you could actually have.
So, with farming moving towards more automation, do you think there are more opportunities for personal injury on farms?
I would say farming in general has gotten quite a bit safer. Silos were dangerous. People either fell, or if you weren't careful, you could get overtaken by gases. I think by and large, milking cows is safer in a parlor than it is in a barn where you're walking in between them, where they can kick you and
Mm.
stuff like that. So I think a lot of things have become more safer. The equipment is a little safer. Tractors, I think, are a little safer. And I think, just there's more stuff that you can do with a machine now than they used to have to do by hand, climbing up hay mows and stuff like that. All those kinds of things were risks that really don't exist so much anymore. But where I would say that where it's changed is people spend a lot more time on the roads. So either hauling manure or hauling hay, silage, corn
Mhm.
silage, haylage. There's a lot more tractors and equipment on the road,
Mm.
and I think there's more collisions happening on the road
Mhm.
involving farm vehicles, tractors getting rear-ended, things like that. I think that has probably become more common, and that's where I think I tend to see more cases
Mhm.
involving farming is people that are injured on the roadway.
Do you think that's a byproduct of farms getting bigger, maybe, and having to transport their goods further?
For sure, yeah, for sure. Because when I grew up, everyone had like 160, maybe a 200-acre farm. You may not even have to go out on the highway to get to your fields. Usually, they would, the barn, the building site was located central, and you could take tractors and wagons out to the
Mhm.
fields, and you didn't have to be going out on the highway with your equipment. Now that's all changed. Now you have more and more acreage. It's spread out. Trucks, big equipment. You may be going 10 miles or more.
Mhm.
To get all the feed you need, and to get rid of your manure. That's kind of the major issue with dairy farming is getting rid of the manure.
Mhm.
So you have to haul the manure out. You have to bring the feed in, and that's usually done at long distances with semis or tractors and carts and things like that.
Mhm.
So for sure.
Yeah, and these were the types of vehicles that you talked about in the last episode, sometimes needing a CDL, but not always.
Yeah. Yeah. Generally speaking, this varies by state, but generally speaking, farmers themselves are exempt, and their employees are
Mhm.
exempt from, let's say, the requirement to have a CDL if they have like a truck and trailer that they use to haul feed or haul
Mhm.
manure or stuff like that. But if you do custom work, if you do work for other farmers, usually you'll have to have a CDL. One thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is, as I understand it, even if you're not required to have a CDL, you're still required to follow the commercial regulations for operating that vehicle, maintaining it, lights, brakes, things like that. The weight restrictions might be a little different, but you're still held to a lot of the same standards that you would be if you had a CDL. You're just not required to have a CDL. So
Mhm.
I think that's where I would like to see more effort put in, is for farmers and their employees to get actual training of some
Mhm.
sort on how to drive their vehicles, but more importantly, how to maintain them,
Yeah,
and keep them in good condition.
and better kind of distribution of information about those requirements and expectations for that equipment.
Yeah, I mean, and with the internet now, there's a lot of information available online,
Mhm.
videos. I've done a lot of my studying just by, like I said, I've had some audios made, or I have outlines made. There's a
Mhm.
lot you can study. YouTube videos. The other day, I was trying to get better at double clutching, so I was
Ah.
watching some YouTube videos, and that helped a lot.
Mhm.
So that can get you there quite a bit. But at the end of the day, there is a certain element of you actually have to be in the seat. You have to be
Mhm.
driving to kind of get the feel. There's a lot of feel
Mm-hmm.
involved in trucking, I have found.
So, thinking about your childhood on the farm, are there any accidents or like incidences that you can recall? I'm trying to tie it back to your current personal injury and practice nowadays.
Yeah, a lot of close calls. I was thinking about that. I mean, when I was a kid, both my dad and I had very close calls with bulls. My dad got chased up a tree by a bull. I got chased across my grandpa's barnyard by a bull. It was only through the grace of God that he didn't just flatten me. Bulls, I remember a lot. I remember farmers had gotten seriously injured or killed by the dairy bulls. A lot of that isn't such a problem anymore because most breeding is done artificially, so you don't have bulls in the herd. So that's helped a lot. I remember when I was a kid, there were still a lot of people that used corn pickers. Corn
Oh.
pickers were notorious for taking thumbs and fingers and hands. Yeah, no one really uses corn pickers anymore. They plugged up a lot. My dad had a corn picker. I remember it. I remember one time. This is when my dad was working on the big farm in South Dakota. I was driving. I must have been 8, 9 years old. I was driving. It was sort of the precursor to your side by sides and stuff like that. It was a 3-wheel cart, and it was used to haul like calves around and feed. And it was an open front, and I was driving across the yard, and it had a kind of a cage in the back of it. You could like put a calf in it or something like that and transport them. I was going across the yard. It was a big farmyard, and I came around the back of. I remember it was the silage truck, and I came around the back of it, and the box is kind of tall, and I was underneath it, and I was going, but I forgot about the cage behind me, and I caught it, and it brought the front end up, and I smashed my hand between the handlebar and the truck, and I thought for sure I broke my hand, but I didn't.
Wow.
But something like that could have ended much, much worse. Like if my head would have gotten hit or something like that. Fortunately, it was just my hand and broken. But things like that happen in the normal course, especially with kids, is still a hazard. And I would say one of the things that I unfortunately see more of is ATV and UTV accidents. It's something I talk about quite a bit. I had a case a few years ago in Iowa where he was maybe 7 or 8.
Oh, wow.
Was driving like a Polaris Ranger type thing, a UTV, and he tipped it over and he slid out because he didn't have a seatbelt on. He couldn't drive it with a seatbelt on. His legs weren't long enough, and he got killed because the roll cage actually pinned his head against the ground. So I've seen a number of those, and so that's one thing I really talk a lot about is the importance of being careful with those, because when I was a kid, 3-wheelers were a thing and 4-wheelers starting to come out, and they were great, but you had a lot of people, including kids, were injured or killed when they would roll over on those things. So now we've gone to the side by sides, which have kind of a cage or a cab around them, which is great as long as you're strapped in. You're designed to be strapped in. As long as you're strapped in, you roll over. You should be safe from serious injury. But most people don't wear seatbelts. Don't have your kids wear seatbelts. But it's really, really important. If I could say one thing, if you have those things and you have kids, whether they're driving or riding, throw those seatbelts on so that if the thing does roll over, and it doesn't take a lot, maybe you're going in and there's a clump of dirt or a hay bale or something, you don't hit that, and that thing goes over. You want everyone to stay inside the vehicle, not get cast out of it, and that's where injuries can happen. So pretty much every farm has a UTV now, and so that's one thing I really warn people about is be safe, go slow, and use your seatbelts.
Yes.
That's probably the biggest warning I would give to people for modern farming.
Good advice. So, if you've been affected by any of these farm incidents, UTV, ATV, trucking incidents, we'll have Craig's contact information in the description.
Yeah.
So you can reach out, and hopefully it's not you, but if you need it.
Yeah, I really enjoy working on the farm cases. I really enjoy working with farmers and their families, and I hope people never have to call me, but sometimes it happens. Like I said, my motto in life is to make farming safer and to help families when it's not quite safe enough. And so things will happen, and whether it's a farm accident or you're out on the road or something like that, there's unique things that affect injured farmers and their families in a way that people may not understand. Attorneys may not understand if they don't have a farming background. So I really enjoy talking to people about that. I'll be happy to talk to people, and if I can't help you, send you to someone who can.
Yeah, And I mean, I'm convinced. I mean, all the vocabulary today, I can
Well,
tell Craig knows a lot about farming.
yeah,
So,
I like talking about it. It's been fun to be able to talk about it. So if people have questions about any of that, feel free to leave a comment or use the contact information in the description and send us a message, and I'll do my best to answer it for you.
yeah.
All right.
All right. Nice talking to you today, Craig.
Yeah. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And until
Thanks.
next time, everyone,
Bye-bye.
have a good one.